Today we have another powerhouse guest, Peter Relan. Peter is the founder of YouWeb Incubator and 9+ Accelerator. Peter's on the board of directors of Discord, which is a communications platform that got really popular with gamers from Twitch, and now it's expanded to all communities. Discord has 130 million unique users and a $2 billion valuation. Peter's also the CEO of an education startup called Got It. Just like Google organized the world's information, Got It hopes to organize the world's brain power. So if you're ever watching a thermodynamics clip on Khan Academy and you get confused, you can message an expert, because real understanding comes from interaction and questioning. Let's go hang out with Peter.
So yeah, thank you for joining us, Peter.
Thank you, and wonderful setup.
So yeah, the first thing we wanted to get into is early on you founded something called Webvan, which is involved in the grocery delivery space.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, technically I'm not the founder, I'm the founding CTO of Webvan. It was founded by a gentleman called Louis Borders. He had founded Borders Books and Music, and so he understood the retail space. It was just around the time that Benchmark and Sequoia, two of the best well-known VC firms, when they had funded it, I was brought in to help build it. And so at the time there were just 2-3 people, and Louis Borders and myself, and so we set about building it. And it was a moonshot. It was one of those, ideas that the whole idea was that the entire Bay Area would be serviced by one gigantic distribution center.
Wow.
Which would be the size of 18 Safeways in terms of its capacity.
Wow.
And it was quite the footprint was enormous. I mean, we built a distribution center in Oakland opposite the arena, and we were, it's 8 football fields long.
Wow.
If you can imagine that, that's 1.5 miles. And we had 5 miles of conveyor in it, conveyor belts, and highly automated. This is over 20 years ago. But there were these totes, which were the plastic containers into which your groceries would go. They would snake their way through the various sections of the distribution center, and they would stop where there would be a pod. Let's say that pod is the aisle that represents spaghetti and pastas and, rice. And this carousel would spin, and then a worker would just have to open the door, pull out the jar of spaghetti and put it in, and the tote would move on.
Wow.
And it would work its way through 5 miles of conveyor until all your different groceries were in the tote. If it was multiple totes, they would be combined, and then they'd be off into trucks that would leave and go to 18 different 7-Eleven sized cross-dock stations where there would be vans waiting, and there'd be a transfer, and the vans would go out into the neighborhoods.
Wow.
To deliver. And we had a 99.2% on-time delivery.
Wow.
So it was quite an amazing spectacle, actually. But then what goes on behind the scenes is, I think, the other part of it, right?
Yeah. It sounds like kind of like Amazon before its time.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the Amazon warehousing technology, a lot of my team that was at Webvan ended up at Amazon, some of the senior leadership. A couple of guys who started a startup company called Kiva Systems, which is a robot that moves around warehouses and picks up pallets. That was acquired by Amazon, and so a lot of the ideas of automated warehousing, Webvan was experimenting with, and we were pioneering at the time.
Yeah.
And successfully to some extent, in the sense that we achieved escape velocity, achieved an IPO, and of course then the .com, the stock market crashed, and it's a very capital-intensive business, so there just wasn't enough fuel and capital to just keep going. Right?
Got it. So now it's especially relevant with all these grocery deliveries like Instacart, DoorDash, Postmates. So what was the technology differentiator? Like, why did it take 20 years for that idea to pop back up in society?
So I think the most challenging economic part of home delivery of any kind really is the last mile, right? Is the delivery to the end user, because the end user wants convenience. So they want a particular delivery slot, and drivers cost, and cars and gas costs money. What has since happened is, like, the entire workforce for Webvan was our employees, and we had hired the chief operating officer of FedEx Western Europe.
Okay.
So, you know, we had a fully trained workforce of drivers who would be out there.
Yeah.
The big change, I think, that occurred was crowdsourcing of driving. With Uber and Lyft, the notion that a car that is somebody else's and they don't have to be an employee of yours can be deployed,
Yeah.
and the systems and the mobile technology to be able to take the gig, if you will.
Yeah.
That, I think, has been inflectional in the change towards modern home delivery.
Got it. So you're missing transportation technology of some kind, like maybe gig workers employing them to deliver.
Specifically that, yeah. I would say that brings down the cost structure a lot, because you are working with incremental capacity that's out there and available versus fixed capacity that we had to build ourselves off the driver, the vans, and the workforce, right?
Yeah.
So from a pure economic perspective, it's just much more expensive to have a completely self-owned workforce unless you are at really, really massive scale, like UPS or Amazon or the Postal Service or something.
Yeah.
For DoorDash and for Instacart, the crowdsourced delivery model allows for you to, even be not that massive and still have, good economics on the driver part of it.
Yeah.
It's still challenging. It's not like, I know of stories of drivers who really, like at Webvan, we would actually measure how many steps from the van when it stopped to the doorstep and how many steps back.
Oh, wow.
Because we were trying to get to 3 deliveries per hour, and we were at 2.4. And to get to the last 0.6 additional, we were really trying to optimize. And you would even do industrial engineering studies of the pace at which they'd walk. Can they walk a little faster? Can they not walk a little faster? Because you're just working on every 0.1 of the metric.
Okay.
So it is actually quite challenging, the last mile.
It's true optimization, true metric.
True metric optimization. They say there's the hedgehog metric versus the fox, right? Have you heard of that?
No.
Well, one is the big jump in metric, right? The 2x or 3x.
Okay.
And then there is the, working away at the 0.1, the 0.1, the 0.1 until you make your way there. So there's two ways to. So it really does come down to, in this online home delivery space, every 0.1% in every metric starts to add up to something meaningful.
Got it. Yeah, it's definitely a very ambitious, very tough project to take on. You're solving like 20 plus problems within the same company.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about, we at the time we said we're building Amazon and FedEx at the same time, right? And that alone is crazy if you think about it. And I remember once Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel at the time, we wanted him to evaluate how automated, because they build fabs.
Okay.
Right.
What are fabs?
Where the semiconductors are built. Okay. Right. They're called the manufacturing facilities, fabrication facilities, and they're $2 billion facilities where Intel makes its chips or AMD makes its chips. Yeah. Highly automated, very clean room environments, and so on. And we also had very clean health requirements. So we actually had Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, come and look at the distribution center, which is massive. You can't even walk through it because it's 1.5 miles long. You have to sit on a golf cart to even traverse it. And he looked around and he said, there will be a war here someday. And we said, what is that war? And he said, between the software engineers and the hardware engineers.
Okay. Because
it really is a moonshot when you try to move a particular set of, like, imagine you've ordered milk, diapers, not you probably, but your mom or whatever, milk, diapers, spaghetti sauce, pasta, a salad. Yeah. That particular order has to show up correctly at your door, and this thing is 18 Safeways big.
Yeah.
And it's all done via software and conveyor belts and scanners and hardware. So the systems, they're complex.
Yeah. So you had the former CEO of Intel come and take a look to see how you could automate the warehouse better.
Yeah, and give us a prognosis on how it would go. And he said it's doable.
Yeah.
This is before we actually built it, when it was still empty. And of course, when we built it, you know, I used to live in Mountain View at the time, and the distribution center was in Oakland. So just to give you a feel for my work schedule, I'd go in, normal day, you know, and we'd hired 100 engineers in the first 9 months.
Okay.
So we're hiring 10 engineers a month almost. And so a lot of my time is spent just interviewing, recruiting.
Yeah.
Then all the orders for the next day, the distribution center is working at night, right? So there were times when, because of one small software bug, the whole thing would shut down.
Wow.
And I would wake up you know, those days the cell phones were this big, and I'd keep a cell phone on my pillow. And around 2 a.m. it would buzz, and I'd say, "Oh no!" And I'd get in my car, and at 2:30 I'd arrive in Oakland, and the whole thing would just be like nothing's working. And I would, my team of engineers, we'd sit. We had a trailer outside the distribution center where we had all our, you know, computers, laptops, and we'd start debugging. Because the next day, there are 3,000 people in the Bay Area who are expecting that very specific thing.
Wow, yeah.
Right? And if they don't get it, they're not happy people. They're, you know, when you use DoorDash, or when you use Instacart, there's very little understanding most people have of what goes on behind, because things break, as you know. Software has bugs, all kinds of things happen. We once even had a driver who drove his van under a bridge where the height was very clearly specified that he couldn't drive it, so he locked off the top of the van completely. And so there's 40 orders in there. Yeah. And so somebody has to scramble, and, you know, so we had all kinds of interesting escalation systems and alerts and ways to work the system.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, something that ambitious, things must just be going wrong all times.
Every day. Every day. I mean, you get used to, you know, wearing a pager or, you know, your cell phone ringing. A fire in Oakland once caused the connection between the distribution center and our main central systems in our data center to be broken, so all orders were not going. So we literally had our data center people put the orders on a tape drive and physically carry it over to the distribution center, load it up into the servers over there, and continue business. Yeah. So you learn all the tricks of how you really run an online, on-demand, 24/7 business. There's a lot that we don't see when you see it all so beautiful. And your food comes from DoorDash. It's like nice and warm. It's a great feeling, you know. But I think entrepreneurs who've been through this, or those who haven't but want to, they need to understand that this is more than what you see from the outside.
Definitely. I guess for the user, it's like an iceberg. They just see the end result or the tip of it.
Absolutely. It's the tip of the iceberg, and then how deep below the iceberg goes, nobody knows until it's a scale of operation. Same thing with when you're looking at, let's say, a project like we see the beautiful Falcon, you know, the big rocket go up and then it comes back and sticks, Elon Musk's rocket, right? It looks so beautiful when it comes back and it sticks, right? Yeah. But of course, we've seen videos of the failures of that rocket to stick, so we kind of see, okay, what went into it. Yeah. I wish I had videos of all the times that the distribution center and Webvan was just completely dark, stopped, nothing working. Yeah. But we had those moments. We had many days when that happened, and you have to have poise under pressure. I always thought you just have to know we'll get through this, right? Yeah. And you have to be transparent and authentic with the customer. I mean, I've taken phone calls in those days where I get on a phone call with a mad, upset mother whose child doesn't get, you know, the milk formula, and have to say, "I'm so sorry, we'll make it up to you. We're so committed to this. You are an early customer. This is early technology. Thank you for being a customer, and we'll personally be sending out a shopper to just buy it from Safeway for you." Yeah. And so we've had to, you know, learn how to be authentic to our customers as entrepreneurs.
That makes sense. So another project you've been involved in is Discord, which has done phenomenally well in the last few years. I think it's valued at $2 billion right now. And I think that's a place where gamers can chat with each other. So How did that story start? Was the idea the same all throughout, or did it change over time?
So Discord is an interesting story because the founder, Jason Citron, and I had worked together when I started my incubator in 2007. He was one of those early founders who graduated the first class we had. Our focus was young entrepreneurs who just graduated, Berkeley, Stanford, any university that we could recruit from, didn't have experience. Knew a general space, but more importantly were what I call founder material. And so it was a second time around when he did Discord. He'd already done a mobile gaming company in my incubator, which had a very successful exit of $100 million to a Japanese gaming company. So in 2011, that exit happened. And then he came back in 2012, and we liked working with each other, so we kicked off Discord. But interesting thing about Discord is initially it was a game. So he was working on a tablet-based MOBA, it's called, like a League of Legends-like game. Okay. And because we thought the iPad and the tablet in 2012 was a big deal. And it turned out that, the game, he built it, he got financing easily because he was a successful serial entrepreneur from Benchmark, which is, really renowned. And Tencent, which is a giant Chinese gaming company, did the Series B. So a lot of it was not on the product, but on the founder and his background. Yeah. And I was the first investor and founding director working with him. And the real turning point in that, and you hear the word pivot. I'm sure you've heard that word, and every founder has heard that word. The real turning point was when it was clear that the game itself was not going to be highly successul. And he spent 2 years building that game. And the metrics, these are very metrics-driven games, and so he looked at the metrics and he's intellectually extremely honest, and he said, this is not the metrics that we wanted to see. Okay. Having said that, and this is the true, I think, test of a great founder, in the game he had built voice chat for people to be able to talk to each other. Okay. Because he wasn't happy with the existing voice chat that was available out there in the gaming world. Okay. And so we looked hard, and he and Stan, his co-founder and technologist, said, we may have to shut down the game, but that voice chat, people love it. I mean, in the game, the most kind of valued feature was this chat for gamers. Yeah. And so we pulled it out. And this is, as I said, the true sort of test of a great founder is the ability to fail or have a lemon and squeeze lemonade, as you say, and pivot the company to, okay, let's take this thing that's really popular inside the game, let's ditch the game, and now let us build a voice chat platform for all games. Okay. Because people love it so much in our game. Yeah. So why tie this beautiful asset that we have in technology to just our game? Yeah. People love it so much, maybe they love it in every game. And that was the birth of Discord, actually, was the pivot. And as soon as Jason put it out there, it just exploded. Every gamer who had been playing multiplayer games, there was clearly a latent demand for it because it just grew like a rocket ship.
That is really interesting. So it seems really analogous to the story of both WhatsApp and Slack, where WhatsApp was creating status updates and it pivoted to communication. And then Slack was creating a video game, and they also realized communication was more.
Exactly. In fact, the Slack story is very similar because a lot of people now call Discord Slack for consumers. As you know, it is no longer just a gaming chat tool. Lots of people use Discord because it has the Slack-like channels and groups and so on. So consumer Slack is another word, but the story of Stuart Butterfield and turning into a business enterprise product versus a consumer product. Very similar stories, both started as gaming companies. And yet, I personally feel that, Jason's instinct for games, he was the least likely to pivot to a business play. Yeah. He's been a gamer all his life. His vision is to bring the world together through games. So he's always been very passionate about bringing people together. And so the pivot for him was going to be consumer. We knew that. I mean, we knew he would really just continue to follow his sort of genes into the gaming world. But now we see that it's turning out to be just a place for hanging out, between people.
Yeah, that's incredible. So after the Series B, after 2 years of work, he decided to pivot completely. That's really tough to do because you put in your heart and soul for 2 years.
It's really tough. In fact, I have to say that, just being his mentor and guide, I was there, and it was a painful decision. It was months. There was a period where you really don't want to do it, and there was a period where you even started off the breaking out Discord into a chat platform, and you still keep the team that's doing the game because you're still not quite ready to let go of this baby.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably one of the toughest decisions to make. It's also, I think, extremely important to make that decision and make it hard. Hard as in like a hard right?
Yeah.
Because the longer you are, as a startup, you really can't be defocused. The longer you are in this overlap period where these two things are going on, the more confused you will get.
Yeah.
So it's really important when you pivot to pivot hard, and that's tough because you're really betting everything on this new thing. And this new thing, if it doesn't work, you're kind of out of money, right? And you're not feeling the most confident at that moment in your career, in your sort of startup history, because you've just had what doesn't seem to work. So you're kind of emotionally not at the peak of your sort of top of your game, and that's what makes it hard.
That makes sense. And so since you're on the board of directors, is there anything big coming up that you can talk about for Discord?
Well, I think the big thing that's happening is the whole industry in gaming is now changing. I mean, you have what I would call long-term directional changes, like Google announced something called Stadia, which is their cloud gaming effort, which, strangely enough, I kind of had a small hand in the sense that 5 years ago, we had a cloud gaming company called Agawi, which Google acquired for delivering games over the network in the cloud. But obviously now with 5G, they feel more comfortable. But it's the whole industry. Epic has Fortnite, and they are sort of getting into the games distribution business. Steam has been there forever, the one place where you go to buy digital games. So there's a lot going on, I think. So what I can talk about is the whole industry is restructuring around new distribution mechanisms. Discord announced that they would charge only 90%, charge only 10% rev share, and 90% would be going to the game developer. That was a few months ago. Epic announced 88% and 12%. So you're seeing the traditional, like Apple, 70-30, right, for the Apple App Store, and you're seeing the revenue share move much more favorably towards the game developer.
That's
a
great.
Big change.
Yeah.
I also think that the notion of hanging out on Discord is becoming broader than just for while you're playing the game. We see people now hanging out on Discord while they're away from the game, and they're still trying to stay in touch with their gamer friends.
Yeah.
So you're going to see, I think, a broader, I would say, evolution of gaming and entertainment blending into a world of social interactions, which then, is combined with cloud gaming, and Netflix is already doing video streaming. So this whole industry is really rapidly in flux. So all I can say is we are definitely watching all these trends and staying on point here, and making sure we grow and monetize as well.
So another project you've been working on is Got It, which is an educational interaction platform. So can you tell us more about what that's about?
Yeah, that's a really fun one. So I was introduced to the founder who applied to my incubator. He'd just done his PhD in machine learning and was starting his company right out of his dorm, and came to my incubator a few years ago. And he was Vietnamese, not great English, but kind of this amazing idea that we are living in a world where when we have questions, we always turn towards search engines and look for answers.
Yeah.
And his idea was, we've got billions of people on the planet, and there's probably somebody out there who has a better answer for you than a search engine and looking through all the links and all the overload and, just trying to understand it yourself. And I thought, he just said, look, there's somebody there, but we've never built the network where we can ask a question and find somebody instantly to provide us the expertise or the answer. So he said that he'd love to do that for academic tutoring. So we built this on-demand Uber-like platform where you would ask a question, and within 30 seconds, somebody in the world, could be somebody in Croatia, could be somebody in India, Bangladesh, Ghana, Nigeria, who says, I'll help you, and we limited it to 10 minutes. A 10-minute text chat session on a question you have. And that turned into a fairly robust Series A funded platform company, and today we are doing not just academic tutoring. We're used in 100 universities where students who need STEM-based tutoring are asking questions day in, day out. And we have over 10,000 what we call study experts in 79 countries all over the world who just come in and do a 10-minute gig and leave and make a little money. And so we think it's a really interesting platform. So it was so interesting that he recruited me to actually run it and become the CEO. And since I've joined, because of my background in enterprise software, we have now added to the platform something we call Got It Pro, which is specifically for professional knowledge workers and to Uberize their day-to-day knowledge work. So if you're working in Excel and you have a pivot table or a VLOOKUP that you can't do, you can just click on Got It, and within 30 seconds, a expert in pivot tables will show up and help you do the pivot table, and that's a 20-minute text chat session. So it's diversifying, and it's really helping now a lot of people and thousands of people around the world who also have an opportunity to make money.
Yeah.
So it's two-sided, right? It's an on-demand service like Uber, and both sides come out ahead.
Yeah, that's a really strong mission statement, which is deepening people's understanding of educational concepts.
Yes, and also the notion that education goes on every time, even while you're at work. That's why we went into Got It Pro, because the notion that you have stopped learning and you are now moving into a job and you no longer need to learn, and you stopped it when you were graduating, that's all kind of gone. You're continuously learning new tools, new technologies, new ideas, and so we believe we need to just be there at the touch of a button anytime.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool idea that everyone on the planet might be an expert at something or have a higher competency level than you might in a certain subject.
Exactly. I mean, we think the applications are unlimited. Neuroscience, Buddhism, anything that you feel. I mean, anything that you could type into a search engine and read 10 or 12 articles on and say, oh, okay, I learned something.
Yeah.
Imagine that what we've done really before, and this was the brilliance of the idea, what we've done before is take everything that's in our heads, put it onto servers in the form of web pages and content, right, and then Google ranked it and indexed it and said, here's all the world's information.
Right.
Well, how would we index this? Just everybody in the world themselves is indexed in expertise or knowledge of something, right? And so we actually have something instead of page rank, we call it expert rank. So we think that every human being, it's an algorithm that actually based on how you answer questions and how we have an AI that actually watches the text chat messaging session and sees if the user got something out of it, and that influences your expert rank. So everybody in the world could actually be page ranked, except they're humans, not pages.
Yeah.
And that's the original source of the information that Google ranks anyway, is all the human brain power.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the idea does have the mission statement as well as this first principles, right? Where does all this knowledge and expertise on the internet come from? Right, from the human brain.
That's awesome. And so like the current model is that if I'm a student and I have a question on a STEM problem, I would go to Quora or Stack Overflow. So how is God pushing the world forward on that space?
So it's a great question. The main difference is when you go to Quora, Stack Overflow, or any Q&A site, you have no idea when you will get service, right? And you have no idea about the quality of the service you get. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not so good. It's an opinion, really.
Yeah.
When we do it, first, it's 30 seconds, guaranteed. Somebody will show up. So the whole on-demand nature. So we think of it as going to Quora, Stack Overflow, as like in the old days before there was Uber or Lyft. If you wanted a ride, you go to Craigslist and put up a posting saying, "I'm going to LA. Somebody help me." Yeah. Maybe you'll get a ride. Maybe you won't. Right? Whereas we are guaranteed on-demand 24/7, right? In 30 seconds you will have. So it's very different when you know and you're guaranteed. Second, every expert is audited. So they know that they have to actually provide a good solution. It can't be, well, this is what I think. In our thing, you're getting paid for it. Whereas Stack Overflow Core, they're not. There's nobody has an economic incentive to do a great job.
Got it.
So the quality and the guarantee of timing is really the difference.
That makes sense. And also the interaction component, you can have it back and forth on your
In real time, yes, exactly. Yeah. Because otherwise, we've seen Stack Overflow sessions, we've analyzed them. And some of them go on for 2 days.
Okay.
Somebody posts something, 3 hours later somebody posts something else, then 5 hours later the person says, well, I tried it, but it didn't work, then 8 hours later saying. And we think that can be brought down to 10 minutes, 20 minutes, because it's going back and forth like that.
Awesome. And what subjects have you diving into so far?
So we had academics with STEM. Our next vertical was Excel chat. Okay. So you can go to excelchat.co today, anytime you want. You just type in, hey, I'm working on a pivot table, provide a Google Sheet or an Excel file, and boom, you'll be connected. And soon we'll be bringing out a new one called Query Chat, which is focused on databases and SQL.
Okay.
So we're focused more on where you have to share data that you're not comfortable sharing. Like if you look at Excel, you wouldn't go to Stack Overflow Quora, although they do have Excel in there as a tag. You're not so comfortable putting a spreadsheet out into the public domain, right? The other part about it is it's one-on-one. So if I share my spreadsheet, it's to this one expert and it's a monitored session. Whereas if I put up my spreadsheet saying I can't solve this pivot table onto Quora, the whole world can see my actual spreadsheet, right? And people aren't comfortable sharing data. So we're really focused on data-centric topics. So we'll leave the Java coding and the Python coding questions. They can continue on Stack Overflow because those are little code snippets that people are comfortable with. Okay. And there's so much more open source out there.
I see.
Whereas data, my spreadsheet, my database, I mean, that's not stuff you're going to say, oh, here's my database, everybody, take a look. There's a million people looking. There's data privacy issues.
Yeah.
So our focus is on data, private data-oriented topics.
Okay.
It could be machine learning, could be any data science, could be databases and SQL, could be we've already done Excel. So you'll see a lot more of that. And so we think we'll coexist with Stack Overflow, where Stack Overflow is primarily coding, and we are primarily where data questions are.
And then the ultimate goal is for it to be a universal platform, so you extend the topics like Buddhism and other.
The ultimate goal is to open it up as a platform and let any community, like Reddit /r/whatever, so think of Got It instead of Reddit and say /Got It/ and do whatever you want. And the big difference is we do require that if somebody opens a community, that they manage it to the 30-second window. Like we don't want it to be a open-ended, we don't know, right? Okay. When you'll get yours. So if you are a set of people, there will be this notion of on-demand, and we have the platform tools and the operational, sort of guidance to let people, like if 50 or 100 people in neuroscience decided that they wanted to open a service, they can register with us like the App Store, right? And we can actually help them set it up so that they can meet the 30-second window. Because all the tools, algorithms, and technologies have been developed for that. Okay. Whereas with Reddit, it's easier to do /r/anything and just get going.
Yeah.
There are no tools and technology you need really, but then you don't get the service guarantee and the on-demand aspect.
Got it. Yeah, that's an awesome mission statement. And then more generally, you run the YouWeb incubator. So you've seen 25 startups come through your incubator from, I think, 2007, so 10 years ago. So, is there a certain criteria that when founders come to you that you look for to select them?
Actually, yeah, it's an interesting question. So when we started YouWeb, I thought deeply about this. And there were two main reasons why we went with the model we have. And our model is very founder-centric. So one is that when I'm an immigrant, I came to this country, I graduated UCLA, comp sci, and I just joined a startup because there was a job posting on a career board in the career office, and I just applied. And I had no notion of mentorship or entrepreneurship or what startup is better than another startup. I just joined the first one I could see. And it was fine. It was a great experience. But I realized that there are probably so many people like me at 21 or 22 who graduate and don't have a clear sort of idea of. It's not like when I graduated I had a vision for a product or they're just a smart guy who was probably entrepreneurial and trained in computer science. So one part of my mission, which I'm very passionate about, is to provide a place where that kind of person can find mentorship, specifically. So when I started YouWeb, we took in people who had no work experience, who only just graduated, and like had never even had a job, right? So we really believe in that notion that you don't have to have an idea, you don't have to have a team even, you have to have the raw material. Like YC, for example, you have to have some product or a team or a prototype to even apply there, right? And the reason, I think, is because I can actually come up with ideas. I can even recruit people and form teams. I can't create a founder, right? So when it comes down to the ultimate raw material that is actually something I can't do, it is that. So I decided that's what I'm going to focus on, is to find those founders. And it is hard, because it is like finding needles in haystacks, because a great founder is not like everywhere, right?
Very cool. Yeah. And what criteria do you look for in a person? Because especially with no work experience, it's hard to evaluate someone based on their merit.
Well, I mean, we are very into this notion that you may not have an idea, you may not have a team, but you have the qualities of a great founder. And so my interview process is actually to give them biographies, books to read on Bill Gates, on Steve Jobs, on Larry Ellison, which is because I worked at Oracle, and on Intel, Andy Grove. And these are sort of essentially the people who built the sort of core, and I guess David Packard and Bill Hewlett, they're the people who built a big chunk of Silicon Valley and the computing industry as we know it. And then to ask them, right? Now, my own personal, like if I had to say the perfect founder would have the strategic skills of Andy Grove, the competitiveness of a Larry Ellison, the brilliance of a Bill Gates, and the marketing and product vision of Steve Jobs, right? Because that is each founder's unique quality. Larry's very competitive, Andy Grove is very strategic, Bill Gates is obviously brilliant, and Steve Jobs known for his product marketing, genius. So what I do is I say, look, it's impossible to combine all four. Even each of these four never had all four qualities. So let's give these books and let the founder identify who they felt closest to when they read their life history and their book. Because that's really the story of an entrepreneur is what touches another founder's heart. Like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I did that, right? Or, oh yeah, I've been programming and I did the same exact thing, but I'm not Bill Gates, so I didn't do it. I want them to come back to me after reading these four books. And it takes them, weeks, like, to go through them and say, what did you find? Which story did you find touched you, and why?
That is really cool. It's a really eccentric interview process.
It is a very unusual interview process. People go, like, that's your interview process? And I say, yeah, first go read these books. I don't want to, I say hello and then go read these. Then we'll talk.
Yeah.
And what I'm just looking for is them to identify what traits they found in these books or stories that they identified with. Once they can tell me that, then I start to get a picture of this person and who like their life, like even when they were 8. Like when Jason Citron told me, when I was like 11 is when I started, I started programming my first video game.
Okay. And
I said, okay, this is a person who lived and breathed and loved video games for when he was like 5th grader, right?
Yeah.
So you get a feel for, okay, it's in his DNA. Yeah. So that's kind of what we do. And then we give them a year. So most incubators, as you know, is 3 months. Right. The reason we give them a year is because I actually think that it takes a few months to just come up with an idea.
Yeah.
Right. We're not asking you to come in with an idea. We're just going to say, try different things. Right. What space do you like? Oh, I think this is an interesting space. Try it. And then we let them fail. We let them. But I firmly believe that if I've selected my class well, the founder raw material, that's what's absolutely not. I mean, that's hard to find.
Yeah.
And so the rest, we can come with ideas, we can co-create, we can put teams around, we can find financing. All these are needed, necessary, but not sufficient. What is really the critical ingredient is founder material.
Got it. So it's kind of irrelevant who they choose out of the 4 people. The goal is for them to understand themselves and for you to understand who they are.
Exactly. Because once we know, okay, this is a competitive athlete, then we say, okay, this might be a person who there's another company doing something and they're not that far behind, but they will absolutely compete like crazy. So take like Lyft and Uber.
Yeah.
That's not a vision, I would say, fight.
Okay.
It's an absolute competitive battle, right?
Yeah.
So then we say, okay, this person, if they identified more with Larry Ellison's story, if they want to build a Lyft to the Uber, let's go after that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who is like Hong, who is, Hong is the founder of Got It.
Yeah.
Much more of this crazy idea, right? Like Larry and Sergey. We now added, Zuckerberg's life story and Larry. So we keep adding books, right? So just kind of the whole indexing, the whole human brain project, right? That is more like a Larry and Sergey. So we say, okay, let's really help them build amazing algorithms and technology, which is what we did at Got It, because that's what they come from, with a PhD in computer science, with this idea of indexing the whole human race. Well, that sounds a lot like Google went there, right? So you sort of see patterns and you say, okay, let's focus this company on technology. Let's focus this company on competition. Oh, here's a person who has, like Jason, actually has a beautiful sense of aesthetic.
Okay.
And so he's a little bit more like the Jobs aesthetic, where every corner, every pixel matters. So he's all right. Let's make sure the products are beautiful, and that's what is going to differentiate his company, right? So we kind of work that way. Is look for what has worked in technology, and we keep adding these books. And so today's entrepreneurs have to read 8 books, whereas 7 years ago they had to read 4 books, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. We even have recently I sponsored a team where we don't encourage dropping out, but these 2 kids dropped out of college from UIUC, building a mobility last mile for bikes and scooters solar powering solution. And again, you see a pattern there, and you see that these are people with a certain type of entrepreneurial instinct. And I've just sponsored them, and we'll see how it goes. But we look for that founder, and when they first came to me, what they were pitching, that idea, was interesting. But now I'm able to introduce them to a Lyft or an Uber or a Line Bike, where I'm an investor, and their whole orientation. I'm watching them morph as we speak, and you can just tell, okay, this founder, it's not a hard pivot, but they're really learning quickly how to interact with these huge companies. And these are 19-year-old guys who probably never had leave alone a job, they've never had an internship before, right?
Yeah.
And so you really look for that very unique quality of a founder, even at 19.
Yeah, that's a very relevant connection. Someone who's working on last mile transportation and being introduced to Line Bike.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have all these connections. The founder of Line Bike is actually on the board of Got It. Okay. So, you know how Silicon Valley works. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
Very interconnected. So for me, it's one phone call, and for them, it changes their whole, trajectory.
That's
to be able to, it's a make or break if they can get that deal done. So I can't talk about the specifics, but,
sure.
It's clearly something that this is what I can bring. As I said, I can't make a founder. Yeah. What I can do is, if we find a great founder, I can do all this other work.
Yeah, cool. And then kind of a more open-ended question is, there's a lot of different verticals that you're tackling, which is like video games, education, and probably a lot of other stuff. Is there a certain worldview that you're trying to execute on? Or is it mostly chasing excitement and just whatever?
No, I think there is a worldview. We really do want. So another company, second-time founder, Epic, it's called the Netflix of children's books.
Okay.
Epic is used in 91% of U.S. schools today for reading. And it's got all the children's books that you and I grew up on, right? So we do focus on impact. And when I say impact, I don't mean like we are an impact investor like Omidyar Network or something where they focus entirely on foundations, just like foundational work, right? I like when Jason says bringing the world together. You know how divisive a world we live in today, given the political climate. So any mission like bring the world together or Got It, as much as education, the ability to empower the entire world's population to take their expertise and somehow monetize it in small chunks of time, that's going to bring up everybody.
Yeah.
The Optivolt guys, adding solar power to last mile mobility, that's beautiful for green energy, right? Epic, which is doing the Netflix for children's books, using a tablet or a mobile device so that when they're going to get to their hands on it by the time they're 3 anyway, right? But to turn them towards reading at that age versus playing just tons of video games, for example, even though I have, or Netflix videos, right? Yeah. Even though I am interested in gaming, right? But even the gaming part of Discord, it's to bring people together. So I love when our founders do things like bring people together, empower people, educate kids. So you can tell that I'm not necessarily like doing charity work. These companies are all valuable companies doing great for their investors. Definitely. But the team is generally empowerment. And the same is for my incubator, right? I want to empower any 22-year-old person who somehow can connect with me and show their founder skills. We can help them.
Awesome. So like the main idea is to create sustainable business models to bring the world together, or to push a positive view on the world.
Exactly, because I think that there's a whole view on social entrepreneurship, and my view is every entrepreneur should have a mission that is positive, right? I mean, I suppose like let's say Dollar Shave Club, where you get your you could argue is it a good business or a bad business? Well, it's business. It's a good business. Is it what I would do? Probably not. Okay. Was it $1 billion outcome? Yes. Got it. But it doesn't make me feel passionate.
Got it. Because there's no mission.
There's no mission in it that I personally can relate to, right? Yeah. I'll take on a harder project that might not have an exit so soon with a thing that I personally connect to, while not being either a charity or technically a social entrepreneurship sort of venture, right?
That makes sense.
It's just my personal belief that empowering people, positive impact are just fundamental to what entrepreneurs can bring to the table. So why not, help them?
Definitely. Cool. And I guess diving more into your personal life, are there 2 or 3 books that you would recommend to people watching?
So I think that there are good books that tell stories of good things. I definitely think that anybody watching should read those 4 autobiographies. Right. So read Only the Paranoid Survive by Andy Grove. Read Hard Drive, Bill Gates' story. Obviously, Steve Jobs' story. And if you feel like reading it, it's more humorous. Larry Ellison's his biography is called The Difference Between Larry Ellison and God. God doesn't think he's Larry Ellison. That's the name. That's the story. So, but still, it's an interesting book. So I think that's just a fundamental, foundational thing. Yeah. Read stories and Larry and Sergey's story and the Zuckerberg social network, because these are foundational understanding how Silicon Valley, the David and Hewlett Packard story. The second thing, there's a second area that I think we are really struggling with now is a moral compass. Okay, I mean, look at what's happening with the last 2 years of Facebook, where we all feel like, can we trust this company, right? We all feel that. We all use it still. I actually stopped using it, but we all look at it and say, what's the moral compass here? Correct. Right? Yeah. At Discord, when we started to see Charlottesville and some neo-Nazi sort of groups forming on Discord, non-gaming, Jason wrote an article called, a blog post called Love Not Hate. And he was very clear. He said, this is what the mission of this platform is. If we discover that you have hate speech on this platform, we will shut you down. There was no equivocation on that. With Facebook, we've seen so much equivocation, right? They're like, it's not a job, it's not sure, da. So I personally feel very strongly about a strong moral compass. And that every company should have. There should be a true north for the company, which is, what is the mission statement of a company and why it believes it should exist. Yeah. Right. And so any book or any story that inspires people watching this, where they can go after that, right, is something important. Another book I think I recently really liked is a book called The Good Immigrant. I feel like immigrants have done a tremendous amount of wealth creation and positive work in American society. Mm-hmm. And again, we're living in a culture where immigrants are now, they're clamping down on visas. It's hard to be an immigrant in this country and feel welcomed. Yeah. And I think The Good Immigrant is just a collection of stories of people and their stories of immigrating to the United States and some of the challenges that they've had to face. And it's not about entrepreneurial immigrants. It's actually about just everyday people. And I thought that was a wonderful sort of book. So I would say founder stories, any story that encourages sort of a true north or a moral compass for your companies, and then lastly, anything that provides some empathy towards the fact that America is built on the back of immigrants from day one, actually, right? I mean, after the founders themselves of the country, right? So there have been so many generations of immigrants who've come and built this country that we really need to bring that idea that immigrants are highly motivated. They come for a reason, which is to actually improve lives of themselves, their communities, and therefore they are probably extremely good people to invest in, as opposed to, turning them away. I mean, Andy Grove had the idea that as soon as you graduate with a master's or a PhD from a top university, staple a green card to their diploma.
Okay.
That was his actual proposal. Right? Any PhD or master's from a university in computer science or engineering, just staple a green card. Okay? There's a reason for that thinking, right?
Yeah. So overall, it's the 4 foundational autobiographies or biographies, and then The Good Immigrant.
The Good Immigrant, and I can probably think of a couple others that I personally liked. I personally am a fan of Buddhism.
Okay.
So just your basic introduction to Buddhism is a great book. I think you can incorporate the principles in there into your company and your way you actually execute in your company's life.
Oh, fantastic. And I guess that would segue into, is there a habit that you enjoy doing? Is like Buddhism an important habit for you or something else?
Well, yes, the central, and you can see the environment we create here, the central thesis that I enjoy is Buddhism's 4 noble truths are very simple. Life is suffering, there's a reason for the suffering, there's because of the attachment we have to things that are impermanent, everything moves on.
Yeah.
There's a solution to it, which is introspection and meditation. And then, the question is, what does that mean? So I find that what I can do at any time during the day, I start my day with it, is introspective meditation, which is just to close your eyes and observe what your thoughts are without judgment. It gives you a very good feel for what is either bothering you, exciting you, troubling you, non-issue for you, almost like stepping outside and just observing your thoughts.
That's fantastic.
It's something you can do anytime. Like anytime I'm feeling a little off-center, I'll just sit down, go to a quiet place, and I'll close my eyes and observe what is going on.
Sure.
And it brings you back to center and who you are and what you care about very quickly, because you realize so many of these things that we kind of get thrown off by in day-to-day life, it kind of, when you step away, it kind of makes them smaller and puts them in perspective, right?
Yeah.
And once you put all these things in perspective, the core of you becomes large again.
Yeah.
And that's you, whoever it is that you are, right? You know yourself, If you don't know yourself, this technique is really good in discovering who you are. Because, at 18, 20, 21, some of the young people watching this, it's not like, I didn't know where I was at 21. I knew where I was at 30 sometimes. But this introspective observation is a really good habit that I've learned, and it brings me back to the center of who I am, what is my mission in life, what is my purpose in life, and that then sets the tone for what I do.
Very cool. So meditation, most important habit for you.
Most important habit.